All right, welcome everybody to Legal Tech Week. It's October 3rd, 2025, and this is the show where we talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation, usually from the past week, but we were off last week, so got a lot of real estate we can cover if we want to. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next, and a nice full house of panelists today. Let's go around and do intros. Rhys, you want to kick it off?
Sure, I'm Rhys Dipshan. I'm the editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News, and I've been covering legal tech since about 2016.
All right, Niki, how about you?
My name is Niki Black. I am the Principal Legal Insight Strategist at 8am, the team behind 8am, My Case, LawPay, CaseSpear, and DocketWise. And I write legal tech columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, and the Daily Record. And I also author our Legal Industry Report. And this year I also authored our PI Legal Industry Report.
All right. Caroline.
Hey, nice to see
you.
everyone. I'm Caroline Hill. I'm the editor of Legal IT Insider, based in the UK. And to Rhys's point, I thought it was my decade writing about legal tech this year until I got a load of messages on LinkedIn saying, congratulations on your 11th year. So I was like, oh, well, anyway, 11 years.
Wow. All right. You're getting old. Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Director of Content at Legal Tech Hub. And today is my exact 1-year anniversary of going to Legal Tech Hub, even though
Oh,
I've
wow.
been thinking about legal tech much longer. Yeah, somehow that's been a year.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And Joe.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law, and I have a podcast called Thinking Like a Lawyer. I am enjoying the brief resurgence of warm weather here in New York. We'll see how long it holds.
All right. And Victor, how's the weather in Chicago?
It's like 84 degrees here today. We have the air conditioning on. I mean, I can't recall the last time we had the AC on this late in the year. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that though. My name is Victor Lee. I am assistant managing editor for the ABA Journal covering business of law and technology. I've been there for almost 13 years now, but no anniversary today of note. So.
All right. A bunch of us going to be in Chicago next week for Relativity Fest, and we are actually going to be doing this show live at Relativity Fest, only we're not doing it on Friday. We're doing it Thursday. Go figure.
It is supposed to cool down next week when you guys are scheduled to be here.
It?
So yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So we're doing it tape. We're doing it tape delayed in front of a live studio audience. That's, I think, the right way to say it.
Is that broadcast lingo for it? How we're doing it?
Yeah. I think that's what we're doing, because we are not going to be live, quote unquote, but we'll be taped in front of a live studio audience. So like every sitcom of the 80s.
Yeah. But we will be.
We should have a laugh track. That'd be funny.
Hopefully we'll all be alive there. Yeah, we should have. Well, we've tried.
I volunteered to be Alf.
A laugh track here once. That never happened.
That's true. I know. I don't know why that didn't work. Anyway.
Yeah. But we will. So what we'll do is record it and like put it up next Friday, probably. So for people who aren't at Relativity Fest who want to see it, I think it'll be a little bit sketchy of a recording, a little bit like the way we did it. Where did we just do this? At ILTA? Was it ILTA? No. Where did we just record? I don't remember.
Kaleidoscope.
Oh, at the Kaleidoscope. Yeah. God, too many conferences. But we'll do that and put it up and post it, and hopefully that'll work. And then we'll be back the week after that. Anyway, so I don't know. One of the ways the legal tech internet kind of blew up over the last couple of weeks was over this whole dust up over a anonymous Redditor's post about Harvey, in which he claimed to have just been let go from the company or have left the company, whatever it was. His post has now been taken down, although the discussion thread from it is still up on Reddit. But in which he kind of went on to trash Harvey as just a ChatGPT wrapper and claim, other people were like claiming the CEO or something was like disappeared for 6 months or something. It was the weirdest Reddit thread about Harvey. And then that kind of spilled over into LinkedIn, where Legal Tech LinkedIn kind of blew up with all these posts about Harvey and the creds or not of the people who posted on Reddit. I thought my favorite post about this came from Pablo Arredondo, who described the guy on describe the guy who I can't find it. Oh, here it is. The guy who originally posted, I say a guy, the person who originally posted on Reddit as an anonymous tears falling on the Cobra form hissy fit, which was I thought an interesting description of it. But I don't know. Part of it just why is it that people love to hate Harvey? I like that's kind of one of the questions. I mean, we've been guilty a little bit of that even on this show. We'll often talk about, is Harvey just the Jimmy Stewart invisible white rabbit, or is there something more there? What were people's reactions to this whole dust up last week?
I'm wondering if this is their secret PR strategy. Everyone hates on Harvey, and then they get to defend it, and like their defenders step into the threads and defend it, and it gets talked about, and maybe it's this super subversive, super smart, intelligent PR strategy that no one ever thought of before.
No such.
Yeah, I doubt that, but yeah.
Well, it's like New Coke, right? Like they were like people trashing New Coke. Was like, oh no, it was actually a ploy best to make you increase your love of plastic cups. So
I mean, I just feel like, I'm not surprised it took off because everybody does love to talk about this, but like, we're talking about an anonymous, supposedly disgruntled former employee of a company, and we're giving that any credence. I'm just like, it doesn't pass my smell test. And some of the stuff this person claimed to know, if they were high enough up to know that, Harvey would know exactly who they are. If they were just a low-level person, they wouldn't know anything about what the company's doing. They didn't actually say anything that hasn't been put out in like how many different people's opinion pieces for like the last year or so. It was just like so substanceless. Is that a word? It is now.
It is now. So yeah, Reddit, I mean, it's fun, and sometimes it can be the start of looking at something, and then you can kind of like use it to research and dig, and sometimes there's something in it. But just of itself, this whole anonymous trash cesspit that Reddit is, like it's just nuts that for me that it reached the level of to the point where Harvey are then jumping in themselves and providing metrics, and that that definitely added fuel, right? Like, so I mean, I see why they do it. They almost had no choice, but that then sort of adds credibility to it.
I mean, people always blow stuff up on LinkedIn and social, and it's not like real people saying real things. I mean, the crazy stuff you see on LinkedIn, like you think people are sacrificing their children for like, startup revenue, God knows what. And then you go on Reddit and you see, the extreme opposite. I mean, to Bob's point, though, I think the problem with Harvey and like why everybody talks about it and why, it's kind of like the company that people like to hit is because they didn't really go out there and like show everybody what they were doing when they first blew up. They were really cagey about it. They've had a ton of funding, and I really believe that their strength is their law firm relationships. And they, didn't really like, go out there and present to the industry in the ways that other companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars and, crazy valuations do. So it's kind of like you created this empty space for people to fill, and you're just raking in cash, and there's a disconnect too, because in the tech industry, like there's always this, assumption or fear that a company is just a fraud. Like, every company is Theranos. I mean, Theranos was completely insane. And the insane thing was that it got to that threshold. So it's like, if this is capable, then like what else is capable? The tech industry exists on hype, and it kind of creates its own, reaction in that sense. If it was just transparent and like didn't hype up stuff, especially on like LinkedIn, like you wouldn't have like these kind of people so prepared to jump on you, I guess, and just question if it's all real and try to kick in the tires.
I think your first
Yeah, I mean,
point was a really important one, though, is that when they first came in, they didn't play by the normal legal tech rules of we're going to go to every conference and we're going to give everyone a demo. And there were a lot of people complaining that they never saw it, but they weren't people that were ever going to buy Harvey anyway. So arguably, you could say, yeah, that's the way everyone's done it. But if they're getting law firms to buy it, but yeah, I think a lot of it initially was well, they won't tell us what they're doing. I haven't seen it. It must not be good. There was a lot of bruised egos, and it's gone not only, but I feel like that was the initial starting point for a lot of this.
That's
Sorry,
not-
Joey.
I'll go.
You go, Joe.
Oh, I was gonna say I'll go harsher. I think that the fact they didn't play by those rules, to Rhys's point, is actually supercharged. Post Theranos, you don't run a company where you hide from everybody what you do. Like that, like in this world, it is just irresponsible to run a company like that. And the fact that they run it like that is why a lot of us, I know, very skeptical of everything they do. I've been hearing lots of chatter from law schools pissed off at them. I don't know. I have very deep concerns, and I'm with Rhys's point that they were quiet and that built something, but I'm adding to Rhys's point that his Theranos comparison definitely supercharges it.
But they don't necessarily hide it from everybody. They're showing it to the people who are buying it. And I mean, I feel like Steve wrote an article about that at one point. Like, they're showing it to the people that are buying it and using it. Does it really matter if I haven't seen it or you haven't seen it? Because you're not buying it.
I think there's been a change. There's been a massive change. I agree with the points about when they started, and they were part of that. Oh, huge frustration. It wasn't just them, the waiting list and the lack of transparency. It wasn't just them. It was this whole, Gen AI. Oh, it was just, outrageous. I agree with you. But recently, I find that there has been, and I don't mean like really recently, I mean over the last few months, they've been much more willing to talk, and their clients, I talk to direct. I talk to clients more than I talk to Harvey. I mean, arguably they're getting all caught up in the hype, but they talk about use cases, they talk about adoption, they talk about percentages. I spoke to Ashurst not so long ago, and they were talking to me about how they're training people to use Harvey and how excited they are. They went onto the FT Innovation Award stage with Winston Weinberg, and they're talking substance, right? So it's interesting. We've all got really different perspectives. I haven't seen recently so much frustration personally.
One
I
thing
think
I
there is
look, and here's the thing, right? This is sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, not just Theranos isn't just the only example, because we do have, I don't think Andrew Arruda is in the audience today, but for a while, Ross Intelligence was an example of this back in the day in the legal tech world, where they were, the toast of the town. They were getting all sorts of honors and awards and everything else, but they wouldn't demo their product for anybody. They wouldn't show it to anybody. And apparently they were getting law firms buying it in theory, and law firms were putting money into the product, and investors were putting money into the product. But it did turn out that for a period of time there really was no there. They did eventually develop a product. And then, now Thomson Reuters is claiming that they basically stole their IP in order to do that, and that's still going through the courts. But there was, I personally, I mean, I think some people got burned by the Ross example a few years back, and this looks like deja vu all over again in a sense.
Yeah, that's sort of the whole vaporware issue, right? And look, the reason why this person touched a nerve with a lot of us is because we've all asked these questions too. Hey, is this just vaporware? Is this just like a souped up version of what's already available commercially or whatnot? So I mean, we've all asked these questions, and look, if this person had the goods, we'd all be jumping up and down trying to get this guy to talk, so to us on the record or whatnot. So yeah, look, it's Harvey is sort of like the thing where it's like, okay, well, we all want to know more about it, but as long as they're limiting, who gets like a certain amount of access to it, then we're always going to have these questions, and these kind of things are always going to be sort of catnip to people who have questions, because it's kind of like, oh, maybe this guy does have the goods, and then you realize that maybe they don't. So I mean, so it kind of creates like its own problem. Like whenever you have these kind of things where someone does speak out against a company, it immediately attracts flies.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the reason it didn't like touch a nerve for me, it was more like here we go again, because I didn't read it. I mean, whether or not anything's true, whether or not people love or hate Harvey, I didn't read anything in those comments that is not something people have been saying for a year. There was nothing new in it. I was just like,
Yeah.
somebody's stirring up shit again. And it's just
Except for the
like,
CEO disappearing for 6 months or something. I hadn't heard that before.
Well,
Had you? Had you?
one thing I thought was interesting was the retention numbers and the way that poster suggested that they were sort of fudging the retention numbers, meaning people were locked into multi-year contracts and they would act like they were continually re-signing up for Harvey when really they were stuck in these contracts. And I thought that was interesting when what I'm going to be talking about when we get to my story is I looked at ILTA's legal tech survey, and I don't know if I think we all got sent copies of it as press, but there were numbers in there about how many were actually using or exploring Harvey, and Harvey came in at 30% compared, Harvey was 5th in terms of using or exploring, behind like Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, CoCounsel, AI, and and then Bing Chat, formerly Bing Chat. But then when you actually look at the breakdown, fully deployed to lawyers, to staff, to partially deployed to lawyers, partially deployed to staff, and then testing or piloting, that's where it gets interesting, because only 7% that said that it was fully deployed to lawyers. Only 4% said it was fully deployed to staff. 24% said it was partially deployed to lawyers. 7% partially deployed to staff. And then 71% were testing piloting. So I thought that those were sort of telling numbers. And when you compare that to the others, like ChatGPT seems to be like, have in some ways a lot higher numbers. Microsoft Copilot, Spellbook in particular had some interesting numbers, but it shows that that I wonder about the disparity in that versus the numbers that they're throwing out there and the numbers that person tossed out there. And so it's a private company, so you don't really get that information, but that's where I think there's a little bit of that hide the ball thing going on, and it's unclear what's actually happening.
What about the whole
Yeah.
ChatGPT wrapper argument thing? I mean, this is that everybody, we've used that as kind of a line to dismiss certain products or throw away certain products, and a lot of people have been saying that about Harvey. Is that a valid critique of a product, or aren't they all just ChatGPT wrappers?
I mean, there's thin wrappers, thick wrappers. Like Rhys and I was still working with Rhys when we dove into this really, deeply. Like, there's thin wrappers, thick wrappers. A lot of the things out there are a wrapper of some sort. People are not building their own thing from scratch, like in terms of very few from the model ground up, right? So it really is. And I mean, I just feel like I'm a giant skeptic. I hate everyone today, but like, I feel like half the people that say the term GPT wrapper don't even know what that means when they're saying it. They just know it's a cool insult that they think makes them look smart. But yeah, I mean, it is. A lot of things are. I mean, but that's not necessarily bad depending on how it's presented, what it does. Does it do what you want it to do? Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
we
they
call
probably
Drake, right? A GPT wrapper, that's Drake, right?
Oh,
Oh.
I mean,
no.
yes.
Oh.
That's
Okay.
bad.
Nice,
The issue is that I think it was Harvey and Casetext were the first legal tech companies to get access to GPT 3.5 in 2022. And Stephanie, who was the editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News back then, she and I and our team, Isha and Cassandra, we wrote about all the issues with Harvey. And it is, kind of strange that they're still coming up because Harvey has become way more transparent. Although the issue basically was that Harvey and Casetext were the first ones to have access to it. So they came to the industry and they were like, look what we can do. Casetext was way more transparent about it. Like, they would do demos, they would do previews, and Harvey was the opposite. So it was interesting and everybody was really curious. However, after some time in 2023, everyone had access to GPT 3.5, then GPT 4, and now GPT 5. So it's like, okay, we all have access to these LLMs. What are you doing, that ChatGPT cannot do? In at the end of 2022, it was just like, oh God, like this is so awesome because these LLMs are so powerful. Nowadays it's like, what else do you have? Like anything, all of us can do this. We all have access to the same tech. Um, and there's like something to be said about being first. You really like impress the industry. You get a ton of clients, which Harvey did, which Casetext did. Harvey just didn't really show anybody anything or talk to the industry. It's changed a ton. To Carolyn's point, they've been quite transparent. They were at Ilticon, they were at Legal Week, they talk to the press now. The problem is because they didn't talk to people from 2022 to like 2024 or something, that, like sense of who are they, is this real, continues, and it's hard for them to kind of shake that. And the stuff that the poster had isn't new at all, to Stephanie's point. Like she and I and our team would like write about that all the time. I think like Isha wrote this fantastic piece that kind of addressed all the concerns people had with Harvey, that eventually led Harvey to actually reach out to us and contact us.
Which was a year and a half ago, which I think is why I'm frustrated, because we beat our head against the wall about those issues a year and a half ago, and people are raising them now like they're new concerns. Yeah.
I don't know if they're new. They're continuing, definitely.
It's probably just the cash that Harvey's pulling in. I mean, they closed $200-300 million funding rounds, and people are like, okay, cool, but like, why? Like, why $600 million? Like, at a what, $5 billion valuation? I mean, people are right to ask questions. In a healthy industry, you ask questions like, why all this cash? Why all the huge valuation?
I do think you should speak to the end. Sorry, I do think you should speak to the end users. That I feel like, not going to repeat my point, but from if you speak to A&O Sherman, if you speak to Asher on this side of the pond, if you speak to a lot of Harvey's clients, they will talk. They'll spend time and they'll talk to you. Miss Harvey's made PR mistakes for sure, but I feel like those people have got no. I mean, actually, that's not true. Like firms often gloss over, they don't want to talk about the mistakes or the holds, but I feel like there's a candor in the conversation. There's an eagerness to talk, and A&O Sherman, for one, is they're not stupid, and they're Harvey's deep within their workflow. They're productizing it now. They're doing so much work with it, and they're not the sort of firm that like if it's just not delivering, they're going to double down on it. They're like they were productizing tech before we even knew what productizing was. That's probably just me, but like they're smart, and they're doing more with Harvey, not less. So I feel like those are the metrics that matter. There's a lot of focus on, there was also a comment about the people that run Harvey were only in law for a year. There's just I mean, I take your point, Joan, about we need to keep pushing, and Rhys actually on the funding, like these are huge amounts of money, and it's definitely the onus is on us to keep digging and pushing. And I think this is perhaps a reminder. Some of these things come up and you're like, okay, we need to be reminded to continuously do our job and do the digging. I think it's super important, but I feel like perhaps I'm being naive, but from speaking to the customers, they are talking a really good, they're talking a good game anyway.
But A&O has a profit sharing deal with Harvey. Like, that's the thing. Some of these firms have their like tech sides where they're actually deep embedded with these guys. Like it's all such a mess. Like, I don't know. Like, that's what scares me is,
because of, maybe I'm not familiar with exactly, but because of the productization element, there is an element of, they've got commercial, but A&O have always had, they've productized with derivatives, that going back with Matrix, whatever it was called, Aosphere, they've done this for years. They're not stupid, there's always been a blur with them, and not in a bad way, because they've done it in a super cool, efficient way. So, but I mean, I take your point. We need to keep vigilant, because it's easy to get washed over with all the the money and get lazy.
I think you simply can't say that they're as secretive as they used to be. That's just empirically false.
Yeah.
But I think it is the money, and I feel like there's just been this giant uptick in AI hate in general lately, and they're always the first ones mentioned in that. So I don't know. Sorry, Rhys, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, I'm sorry. I totally forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah. Harvey is, Harvey's strength is customizing AI solutions for law firms and really, honing that law firm relationship and getting deeply embedded into the law firm, which is a fantastic strength to have. Yes. Like the custom agentic AI tools it did for A&O Sherman was great. Is it the only technology provider that can do that? Just based off the technology, probably not. However, relationships and customizations and understanding your client and the industry, is a strength well beyond technology. Is it, $600 million in 2025 strength? I don't know. Although I do hate, I do believe, to Stephanie's point, there is a lot of AI hate, and Harvey is always like the one that you punch. Although they kind of brought it on themselves because they didn't really talk to people. Like if you don't talk to people, you're gonna, people's imaginations are gonna run wild. Like I haven't been on this call for a long time. I'm sure people thought me a terrible monster before they saw me.
Well, I mean, I told them that before you joined, but yeah.
Exactly. It was all Stephanie. Yeah.
But I think, there's also something we haven't talked about. I had a guest post on my blog from Ken Crutchfield, who headed Wolters Kluwer Legal and other places, and I think, Caroline, actually you had a similar post on your thing. But I mean, the point he made is that a lot of the criticism about Harvey misses the point, which is that it's not always that the best product wins. It's a combination of factors that make a product successful on the market. And he talks about the fact that they've been very smart in a lot of ways. And first they were early to market, but he talks about the fact that the way they've worked with large law firms and tried to customize their products to large law firms and got a lot of leaders in big law to sort of buy into their product and endorse their product. It has all been, kind of smart and savvy on their part. And so part of the reason they're succeeding and doing so well in the market isn't necessarily just because their product is the best one out there, but because overall they've adopted a strategy that's worked to make them, gain a strong foothold in the market. All right. We have like 9 million other AI stories we could talk about today also. I was actually thinking maybe we should go in a little bit different direction, because Stephanie, you've got a story about well, it's about AI, but it's about law school and law students, and then that leads up to a story I had this week about an alternative admission in Utah. So a couple of different variations on the path to becoming a lawyer. So Stephanie, you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, it was super interesting. I haven't had a chance to write about it yet, but it's this Reuters article that I'll drop in the chat right now. So now we went from, including University of Michigan, law school saying you cannot use AI in your applications, to now weirdly requiring law school students. Michigan now has an optional question. University of Miami Law School has an optional question. But they're the weirdest questions. Like, you have to use AI to, what is the University of Michigan one? They have the required, if you choose to do the AI question, you have to use AI to answer the question, how much do you use generative AI tools such as ChatGPT right now? And then predict. So you have to use AI to ask it how much you use AI, which is really weird. But then also the University of Miami one is that theirs is more logical, but it's like, tell us the prompt you use to investigate your different law school options and show us your 3 to 5 follow-up prompts. So they say it'll be not only showing their expertise with AI, but their thought process about getting into law school. And I'm like, it's interesting, but I feel like nobody wants to be the people teaching people to use AI. It's like law firms want law schools to be doing it, which a lot of them are, but now law schools are like, you should already be able to know how to do this before you come in. which some will, but like it's the weirdest about face to me. And not even just use AI, but pick a topic of your choice and show us your AI research skills. It's these weirdly niche dictated questions that are kind of, I don't know, dumb in my opinion.
Curious if nobody wants to teach anybody AI, like law firms, law schools. I want to teach, students AI because they don't know how to. Like, like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's part of it. But so you think it's a good idea, but they're just not going at it in a good way? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or
I don't know about in practice. I don't think it's the worst idea. I think the way Michigan is doing it particularly is kind of dumb because it's like use AI to tell us how much you use AI. Like that question doesn't even why would I ask ChatGPT how can I use AI? I don't know. That's stupid.
Doesn't seem very practical, does it? It should be
No.
like, how would you get them to use AI in a context that is useful, that will actually enable them to do that and replicate it in the future?
Yeah. I think the University of Miami one is interesting because it does is like show us the prompts you would use to investigate your law school options and what you care about and looking for in a law school. Like again, it's still a little bit trite, but it at least shows thought processes and requires prompts or whatever. But I think you could do it in a different way. But that's also like they're a less prominent law school. Maybe they can get a better class and use this as a differentiator and AI skills. I just think it's a really weird way to implement this idea.
It's interesting because I hear from law firms, like I hear law firms complain that law schools don't teach the Gen AI skills that lawyers today need. And then I see tons of like law schools launching Gen AI classes, and I'm like, okay, they're doing it, although are they doing it in the way that law firms want in some sense? Do law firms think that the law school's approach to Gen AI legal education is like applicable to what they really want?
Well, if it's not, they can do it themselves. That's the whole point. But they don't want to
Yeah.
do it themselves. Some law firms do this. I'm painting a very broad brush. And there are, providers out there. There's Hotshot, Alta Claro, people like that. But it also requires firms to make a commitment to them. And it seems like they want people to magically have these skills, but not have to do any of the work to get it to them. Again, not all law firms, of course, because some are doing great things. But yeah.
Well, and this is sort of a little bit separate, but along the lines of the idea of using it to in postgraduate education. My older daughter is getting her master's in information and library sciences, and she told me about a really interesting way that they're approaching it. And I think there are ways to do this in law schools too, but the way that they're being taught to use it is she's in a class where they're sort of getting their resumes ready, and because AI is used to sift through resumes and in the hiring process, they're using AI to help them make their resumes AI friendly so that they'll have the right, they had them draft the resumes on their own and then use AI to make it better so that it would get through that hiring process and show up in more piles because AI picked it for those piles. And I thought that was a really interesting way of teaching them how to use AI in a way that was actually useful and functional and would help them succeed in their job search process. So, and then I've also heard of both my kids, one's in college and like I said, the other's in grad school, really stupid ways that their professors are talking to them about it. So, there are definitely ways to go about it in the law school process too. And I mean, they're all looking for jobs, so that might be one way to teach them to use it in law school. And I don't know what the different law schools are doing. I don't think most of us do unless we recently spoke with like someone from Suffolk or something. But, it's interesting to think of these different ways they can approach it.
We're staring down the barrel of a flash crash in HR. All of the resumes are AI generated and judged by AI as to whether or not they get to a second pass review. I've actually heard people talking about doing both things, and I'm like, that is that flash crash. It's just to like keep going and spitting people through.
Well, and it's not just AI, it's search engine optimization and everything else. And it's just sort of the enshittification of everything. And it's happening at a crazy rate, it's exponential rate. So.
Actually love
well,
that.
all right. So we get into law school, we get out of law school, and now instead of taking the bar exam, Utah has just approved a new route to getting admitted to the bar, which is a skills-based bar admission based on going through 240 hours of supervised legal practice under a qualified attorney, having completed some required skills coursework during law school, and then there's still some sort of a written exam, but more of a practical
I can talk to
application
the written
knowledge.
exam.
Do
I
you
can
know about
speak to
that?
the written exam when you're done.
Yeah. Okay. And so you can fill us in on that. But from what I can tell, this makes Utah, what did I say? Like the fifth, I think, state. I think there are 4 states that already have some sort of skills-based admission, and so once again, Utah is doing something that I think is really innovative. I mean, I've never thought the bar exam is much of a measure of anybody's ability to practice law anyway, and I think it's great that they've gone down this road of giving people an alternative, because it makes it, not everybody can afford everything it takes to go through the bar exam and the courses and everything else, and it seems to be open a different path to getting into law practice. But
Yeah, I spoke with Catherine Bramble, who's one of the members of the task force that initially approved this idea, and then she was also in the task force that drew up the particulars. So yeah, it values coursework. It ultimately, the people have to do over the course of what you have to do as part of law school now, because the ABA now requires you to do some practical work in law school to graduate, as well as their stuff on the back end, over 500 hours of supervised practice, which is good. But on the back end, there is a written exam, and they're in the process of getting it written up. But the one thing that she stressed to me was that their vision for this exam was that it had to be something that a practitioner could take cold right now. Their logic was, and I think this is hugely important for all of the complaints about the bar exam, and how completely unnecessary it is to anyone's actual practice. If it's not something that somebody can pass just by virtue of the fact that they're actually an experienced practitioner, then it's not really a test of minimum competence. And so they're putting together a thing with a closed universe of documents that should cut across practice areas and allow people from any practice area, so long as they know what they're doing, to be able to pass, while somebody off the street wouldn't be able to necessarily. And it, of course, doesn't have to be super, super rigorous to the extent that they have all this other experience, but it's there for that last weeding purpose.
We've had this in the UK. We've obviously gone down the alternative legal services route for a long time, and they've very much opened up the path for. They're trying to make it a level playing field. So they've got the SQE, Solicitors Qualifying Examination. So they're trying to make it a fair playing field. They're not trying to make it, to Joe's point, like you should be equal competence, but they're trying to open it up so that people from all walks of life who can access the profession. And I think it's a really good thing, personally.
Yeah, do any of you think you could, well, those of you who are lawyers in the panel, think you could go in today and pass a bar exam?
Oh God, no. I mean, the New York bar
No.
exam, it's like the stat, at least when we were taking it, was like 2% of all the things you theoretically need to know will be actually asked on the exam. And so like I remember that summer like cramming on mortgages and commercial paper and like weird outdated terms for things. I can still tell you that in New York, unless they've changed it, like burglary has to be at night, but for federal burglary it doesn't. Like I was like that kind of stuff. Like no, I could never pass the bar exam now. Just
Right.
I forgot.
It's so
I forgot 97% of that stuff the minute my pencil went down. It was in one ear and out the other.
Yep.
I mean, I always point to Kathleen Sullivan, famously took the California bar, famed Supreme Court litigator like Quinn Emanuel, blah, 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 Urquhart and Sullivan, took the California one when she got made a dean out there and couldn't pass it. That's a problem. If it's a test of minimum competence and one of the most famous lawyers in the country can't pass it, then it is not a test of minimum competence.
But listen, I think there's a lot to be said about the flexibility of like a 25-year-old brain versus our brains. I mean, come on, maybe I'm diminishing our capacity here a little bit, but and a lot of it was, like the only reason, I mean, it wasn't the only reason, but the night before, this person I was studying who was from Ohio. We're like, here's the one thing neither of us knows, corporations. Let's focus on that. And luck of the draw, there was a huge question on corporations. It was like one of the major questions on there. So we just refreshed our recollection on it. And so, I mean, I feel like there's some of that going on, but, and I know that med school the whole process of getting in, because one of my kids is looking at that, and the exams itself are much harder now than they were back then. The LSAT's harder now than it used to be. I mean, it just seems like there are so many hoops that everyone has to jump through now because they're making everything just ridiculously harder, and it's making these kids sick, by the way. But anyway, I think it's unfair to say, would we pass it now? Because don't you feel like our brains are a little more locked in now and less? I could be wrong.
I mean, maybe, but that's also
I've
a
got the
reason why it's a
CPLR
bad
rules way up
test.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Rote knowledge. Like also like just law
Yeah.
school itself. Like who could tell me the rule against perpetuities? I sure can't. I just know I hated it. But I kind of remember from
An
bar
interest
exam- Yeah.
interest must vest, if at all, within 21 years of the death of a person in being at the time of it was. Yeah,
Fine, but kids
go on.
actually
Oh, you're
apply it.
such a show off, Joe.
I know.
Yeah,
Also, like
so-
there's like little things like again, New York that we had to remember, like jactitation of marriage. It's a crime to say you're married to someone if you're actually not. Like, why is that still in my brain? But yeah, all of these tests are
Well, we had no fault insurance on our exam. And it was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm never gonna own a car when I'm in New York, so why do I need to know this? So yeah, it was just a lot of stuff. I mean, look, there are efforts on the way to kind of make the bar exam a little bit less of a just rote memorization. We'll see how that goes and whether that does, create lawyers that are more ready to practice. I think the ABA standard for increasing the experiential learning, that's on hold. That actually kind of touched off a lot of but yeah, I mean, but ultimately, yeah, is that the bar exam is still going to be, no matter what they do, it's still going to be stressful for people. It's still going to be a lot of unnecessary studying and not unnecessary, but like studying material that will ultimately be unnecessary for you when you practice law, and that you'll forget most of it the minute you walk out of that exam.
most of it's studying and not learning. Yeah.
It just shows you've got the capacity, I think. You've got to show you've got the capacity, right? Like, and you've got the intellect. I think that although we've forgotten most of it, I think it shows, at that I think it shows a certain level of intellect that you have to have probably to practice, is the honest truth.
Well, and I think it's a hazing ritual. Every profession has it. There's hoops you got to jump through, and you can't, you got to have something that people work towards in order to get like admitted or become this whatever type of practitioner you're trying to become in whatever profession it is. But I mean, there's hazing rituals and they exist for a reason. I just think they're getting more extreme for some reason.
I used to have, when I took Massachusetts and New York together, and then I moved to the Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands had a 1-year residency requirement before you could even take the bar. You had to live there for a year. But if you worked in government or pro bono or something like that, you could get sort of waived in for the period of time until you took the bar. That has since been struck down and is no longer valid. But so that's assuming that any of these people are going to have anything to do anymore after AI takes away all of our jobs. And Niki, I know you looked at a couple of surveys this week that talk about exactly that, about the extent to which AI is going to take away some professional work or not. So you want to talk about that? I know you talked a little bit about it earlier, but.
And I was, on LinkedIn, I stumbled across, it was one of the featured news items on the right-hand side of LinkedIn. LinkedIn had a survey, a guide to employment, AI's impact on your employment or something like that. And I still hadn't had a chance to write about ILTA's survey, which is a great survey full of information every year. So I kind of cross-referenced them and wrote about the two of those together. But basically, looking at LinkedIn's data to sort of highlight the areas where they thought that AI would be most impactful and the jobs and the functions that it was most likely to replace. And all of those jobs and functions are also jobs and functions within a large firm. In a smaller solo firm, the lawyer does it all. And then the larger the firm gets, the more you have entire departments that do these things. But writer, editor, data analyst, and marketing strategist were the three that were most likely to change because of generative AI. And so I thought and it was interesting to compare that to ILTA's data in terms of how were firms using generative AI. And they talked about how some areas where firms had planned to increase hiring to support AI were innovation and knowledge management. And then in the ways that it was being used included IT and security training, research, marketing and biz dev. That sort of backs up to what LinkedIn had been talking about in their survey. Litigation support, developing presentations. So a lot of that was sort of marketing, communications, and operations with that overlap, kind of like LinkedIn. But then, as I mentioned in my Legal Tech Reality Check newsletter that I sent out today, I mean, a lot of the functions they're hiring for are functions to oversee or manage AI as to help it replace everybody else's jobs and their own jobs. So it's sort of the functions they're hiring for aren't necessarily, it'll be interesting to see what happens to those functions as AI is fully implemented in the firms, and will those functions ultimately disappear, and what are the new ones going to be? I mean, we all know that new jobs come along as new tech comes out that were never envisioned before that tech rolled out. So it's trying to figure out what AI is going to both replace and create is, I guess, the golden ticket here, and it's hard to predict, but it's interesting to analyze these numbers and see.
Yeah, and that ties to a story Rhys had this week, which is the AI of impact on paralegals and to the extent to which it will or will not replace paralegals, right? Right, Rhys?
Yeah. There has been tons of talk about AI just replacing all the tasks that paralegals do. I mean, for example, we've seen lots of Gen AI depositions tools transcribing and analyzing depositions. That was once the purview of paralegals. It's interesting to hear all these like CEOs and futurists talk about like AI taking jobs. Like I think it was like the CEO of like Walmart was quoted in a Wall Street Journal article that's like AI is going to replace all these jobs. No specifics on what jobs. Google, Microsoft, like all these CEOs of giant companies are like, the AI is going to impact everything. Yeah, sure, it will. It's going to replace jobs. Okay, what jobs? Everybody's like, it's going to replace jobs. And that's what I kind of hear in the paralegal field. It's going to replace paralegals. The problem with that is that, you cannot just leave AI alone to do whatever the hell it wants. I mean, like, it cannot even cite the right, cases half the time. And how is it going to take over like people's jobs? The jobs will evolve. Like the paralegals jobs, as Niki was stating, will evolve to kind of overseeing AI tools, and it does require some human effort to oversee these tools, to check the tools, to clean up the data, to enter the data, to run these tools. For all the talk of like agentic AI too, nobody feels comfortable, turning over like entire processes to agentic AI, and like it's not accurate. And you need somebody to use these tools. And the article that like Ben Joyer and Ryan from the Business of Law team at ALM wrote essentially talked about how the paralegal role will evolve, and how some skills will be, way more prominent than others as they become the front line to use AI tools in law firms. Although this crazy apocalyptic thing of like agentic and Gen AI will just completely replace paralegals, is any like law firm attorney or partner, like who isn't in a solo firm or strapped for like resources, are any of them comfortable or okay with turning anything over completely to AI, which, as we've seen, has failed spectacularly time and time and time again.
I'll go all in and say I think it might make paralegals more essential. I think that these tools plus a smart career paralegal, like I loved the paralegals I had in big law, but they were basically doing the intern between college thing. But like in small law firms, those career paralegals, like they are going to live like actual royalty in this AI world, because these older lawyers, anytime they touch it, they're going to hallucinate a bunch of shit. The paralegals who like sit down and learn how to do this, they are going to become even more powerful. So I'm happy to be a paralegal right now if I were in that sort of role.
I do think that jobs will be affected, but I wrote about a firm that's so sick of everybody sort of fixating on jobs being lost and the ability to train lawyers being lost, and that they're actually working with AI to train their people. So they're actually training lawyers, but they're working with Spellbook. So it's Kennedy's, they're working with Spellbook to train to sort of go some way towards superpowering. You know, it's like everyone's saying, oh, the task that these people are going to do will no longer exist. It's all going to be automated. And actually what they're doing is they're using Spellbook, they're using AI to help train people to kind of, so that it doesn't matter that they're not having to go into a dusty data room and read through, you know, loads of lever arch files, whatever, but like we used to have to. They're using AI, they're leveraging AI to train people. I do think that it's going to have an impact on jobs, but I think that really smart people are using the technology to train people to do things faster, and kind of, you know, those are the firms that, rather than panicking about right at this moment when adoption is comparatively low, the firms that are panicking and starting to lay off business services people, and we're already seeing it. I mean, I think it's just a giant excuse in a lot of cases. But you know, the ones that are really smart are going to be using the technology to train their people, I think, including paralegals.
It's the same thing I've been saying about law librarians too, which I mean, that is pretty woefully outdated title at this point. Like everyone's like, oh, we won't need any of that. I'm like, no, again, those are the people that are going to learn how to use this and use it correctly and actually get the stuff done. They're not, it's just unlike lawyers who don't want their jobs to evolve at all, like the law librarian role has evolved so much and they keep changing, and this is going to superpower them as well. I feel like the same thing about paralegals.
Well, but let's be clear though. I mean, yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Like, it's not going to eliminate these jobs, but will it allow firms to maybe get rid of some of them, and maybe keep some other ones? You know, maybe hire fewer people, maybe cut back on hiring, you know, contract attorneys or temp attorneys or first years, or yeah, of course it will. Of course it will. I mean, that's, you know, that's inevitable. And I mean, so I mean, if it's not going to eliminate all of them, but it'll certainly allow them to cut back on hiring, sure.
Yeah, one other story last week on the AI replacing professionals front was the American Arbitration Association announcing that it's launching this AI arbitrator program in November, where they're going to have basically a fully autonomous AI, you know, taking in, analyzing the facts of a case and analyzing the briefs and producing, you know, award and construction arbitration cases. That will all be reviewed by a human before it goes out to the public. Those final awards will be reviewed by a human, so there's still a human in the loop. But I thought it was really interesting that the American Arbitration Association, which next year turns 100, which its main job is to facilitate matching arbitrators and mediators to people who have disputes, is now launching an AI arbitrator to do that. I'm actually on the AAA panel. I'm an arbitrator on their panel. But I did a story about it, but then I also interviewed Bridget McCormick for my podcast, and you know, kind of said, aren't you is this in some way kind of replacing the very arbitrators that rely on you for their work? And she said, no, because there's just such a flood of disputes that we can't keep up with. It's not like there's any shortage of disputes. And if anything, AI is only going to generate that many more disputes because it makes it easier and easier for people to file disputes, and you know, and even self-represented people to do this. So this is just kind of trying to keep up, you know, trying to keep their head above water essentially by using an AI arbitrator, not get ahead of it. So that was an interesting angle.
Where is this a big
startup? I'm sorry. There was actually a startup that I believe launched 2024, 2025 called like Arbitrus, that essentially does the same thing. Although I'm not sure if they have a human in the loop, except it's, you know, fully automated AI, like full process arbitration. You know, they call themselves an AI judge. You know, the question I had is like, who has the appetite for handing it over to an AI judge? The way that the AAA is doing with the human in the loop makes a bit more sense, and obviously the AAA has a bit more heft. Although I think the AAA is, I'm sorry, I just gotta call it the AAA.
AAA.
Yeah, AAA. You don't have to go through all the A's. I think that they are seeing the tides change and they are trying to get ahead of it, for sure. And if it catches on, then like I could be totally wrong about arbitros. I was a bit skeptical, although there probably are a ton of arbitration disputes that would benefit from this type of automation, and it is a cost issue too. I mean, like, legal services historically ridiculously, expensive. You know, I could see this as a very good thing, and if they do it in the right way, like I think people would be very receptive to it.
Everybody complains about robot judges, but until the moment where they realize, I also think robot judges are weird, but I will say just from a sporting perspective, I'm not much of a baseball fan, but I listened to decades of baseball purists being like, how dare they consider getting rid of umpires calling balls and strikes until the moment they actually saw how well the robots do it. They're like, all right, let's get rid of that. They can't happen fast enough. So there's a chance, especially in arbitration, where a lot of folks go to arbitration because they are very hyper technical, subject matter based contract disputes with that you don't really trust. Definitely not a jury, and probably not just a general purpose judge to bench trial it. So there is an argument. I see it. I'm also a little skeptical too, but I've kind of come around to seeing why they like it.
Well, I mean, when I was a big law litigator, I did largely arbitration, and it was hyper technical area. And if it's a low level dispute in a hyper technical area, I think it's obviously if the parties agree to it, I think that's great. And I mean, that's how they are rolling it out. I mean, I think Bridget has done a ton to overhaul the ABA in a good way, to being very smart about it. And to Bob's point, they're not a niche arbitration or dispute resolution organization. They're the ABA. They have or not ABA, AAA,
Yeah.
sorry. AAA, my bad. AAA. They have so much to do that if they can turn these smaller disputes over, I think it's great.
Well, plus, like, I mean, all contracts pretty much have like a mandatory arbitration clause in them now, right? I mean, it's pretty standard. Like I mean, every contract I sign, even for like small things, has the class action waiver and the mandatory arbitration clause in it. So yeah, I mean, these disputes are only going to grow and grow, and not even like the hyper technical ones, just like someone gets mad at their phone bill and can't sue them in court, so they have to go to arbitration. So I mean, they'll get a lot of those cases too, and you can dispose of those pretty easily without a lot of manpower.
All right. Well, we didn't have time to get to all of our stories this week, including Joe, your stupid criminal story, which is a pretty good one.
Yeah. Not
Is it
even
worth
close.
Is it worth a 1 minute sum up on that one, or is it?
No, probably
Okay.
not. I'll put it in the
We
I'll
can
put
talk
it in the
about it
chat
at
for people.
Relativity Fest next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. We got a full calendar ready. All right, because there's a lot of stories I'm looking at here we didn't get to. I
that we
think.
haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
But we will be. So if you're at Relativity Fest in Chicago, come see us live there, or live with a studio audience, or whatever Joe has said it was.
Yeah.
And if not, watch for us to post a recording. Won't have this program next Friday, but we will be posting our Thursday show. And then we'll all be at Clio after that. Most of
I'm
us.
so jealous.
Caroline, are you coming to Clio?
No, I can't this year because I've got my own event on the 30th, so I wasn't allowed. But I can't wait to see. Are you going to publish the panel again from Clio?
We're not doing it at Clio. They didn't invite us back. I guess we
Yeah.
bombed. I don't know.
That you can do. I can join virtually, so I'm going to do that. Hopefully, I'll see you lot goofing around.
Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Everybody have a good week, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Well,
Nice to see you.